Hello again, time for another video from RCMojo. You may remember quite a while ago when we built the TT-01 Subaru, one of the intended mods was to go brushless. Well, today is the day. First up is a 9-turn motor. Nothing special, but should wake up the TT-01 nicely. This one is from Hobby King. Next is the Hobby King CAR60A ESC. You could get away with the 40A, but I was curious about the light header with the diode symbol on the 60. It has a switch mode BEC, which is good to see, and pretty sure the 40 does too. The last bit is the programming card. They don't cost much, but make setting up so much easier. Rather than trying to decode the beeps, you just press some buttons. Since I'm sure there's a few of you who might want some pointers, in this video we'll be doing a rough install guide and a bit of a demo at the end. If you just want to see it go, there will be another video. If you want an ETA on that, do a search for valve time. The ESC is going to be a tight fit, but the measurements say it should just squeeze in. First things first, we need to pop out the steering servo so we can get at the stock electronics. We'll need to keep the cable for the light kit and transfer it to the new ESC. Switch out and pry the stock ESC. It will be useful for something else later, I'm sure. Maybe an M06. Time for a test fit, fingers crossed. And wouldn't you know it, it almost fits. One of the fan screws just fouls the corner of the antenna mount. Should be an easy fix. Top deck off so we can unscrew the antenna mount and mark where we need to trim. Here's the before and the after, just a small notch. If you go for the 40A ESC, I reckon it would fit without any trimming. Onwards now, gear cover off and motor out. Take off the motor mount, keeping note of which holes you're using. If you watched the original build, you may remember we used a steel pinion instead of the stock alloy one. This is pretty necessary with brushless as the stock pinion will wear very quickly. A good tool to have here is a pinion puller. If the pinion is stiff on the shaft, you can remove it without damaging the motor. Going to use the insulation round thingy. Not sure what it's for exactly, but Tamiya think it's a good idea, so might as well. Use the same screws as the stock motor, M3, using the same holes in the motor mount. You might want a smear of blue or green Loctite, just in case. Pop the pinion on and reassemble the chassis. Okay, the ESC doesn't come with connectors for the motor or battery, so you're going to need some soldering equipment. A chunky iron or a gun is ideal, but you can get away with a smaller iron, but it can be a bit of a struggle. You'll also need battery connectors and of course some 3.5mm banana sockets for the motor connection. These are sometimes labelled as bullet connectors. Either way, they should look like this. If you haven't got anything to clamp the connectors down while soldering, a pair of pliers and a rubber band can be used in a pinch. Bananas first, clamp one down with the shallow end up. With the tip of the iron tin, heat up the connector and feed in some solder. Now the tricky bit. You need to heat up the connector and the tin end of the wire at the same time while lightly pressing the wire into the solder. This is where a big iron or gun is good, as it will heat up instantly. With a small iron it can take a few seconds to melt the solder. Do that to all three and that's done. Now for the battery connector. We'll be using Dean's as that's what's already on the battery. To keep the pins nicely aligned, plug the male into an unused female connector. Don't use one that's already on a battery as you don't want to accidentally short it. Clamp the connectors down and tin the tabs. The light kit cable needs 15mm or so of the insulation stripping and the bare wire wrapping around the end of the ESC wires. Solder them together and pop some heat shrink over the wire. Solder the wire to the connector, repeat for the other, and that's the soldering done. Just need to insulate the bananas with some heat shrink and shrink it with a heat gun. Or maybe fire if you're feeling adventurous. Time to fit the ESC using a bit of servo tape. Make sure everything is clean and stick it in. The 3 motor wires can be connected in any order. If the motor runs backwards, just swap any 2 of them. Now the servo goes in, leaving us with a lot of wires to tidy up, which is easier to do with the top deck off. Using the method we used in the initial build, the wires get folded up and tied with zip ties, then squeezed into the gaps around the ESC. The switch is just attached with a bit of servo tape as it's too small for the slot in the chassis. Lastly, the battery cable gets tied up, battery in, and we're ready to go. Hope that was useful for somebody. Keeping the wiring tidy is important so the wires aren't swaying around causing joint fatigue. Once the motor direction is tested, the motor wires will be tied down too. Anyway, that's that, so guess what's next? Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it and or found it useful. If you want to know when we upload videos, you can hit the subscribe button. And of course, if you liked what you saw, like it.